She never even met me. That was the part one kept coming back to. Not the pictures. Not the camping trip. Not even the fact that my boyfriend had somehow forgotten to mention that his best friend used to be his girlfriend. It was that after almost a year of being with him, after dinners with his friends, weekends with his family, quiet mornings in his apartment, and all those little ordinary moments that make a relationship feel real, there was still one woman in his life who could rearrange everything without ever looking me in the eye. Her name was Jenna. And for the first few weeks, I did not know that name was going to become a weather system in my life. When I first met Jeff, he had this calm, steady way about him that made the world feel less sharp around the edges. He was funny without trying too hard, thoughtful in a way that did not feel rehearsed. The kind of man who remembered how you took your coffee, then pretended it was no big deal when he showed up with it. We had been dating for only a short time when he started talking about his best friend, Jenna. He said her name easily. Too easily, maybe. At first, I thought nothing of it. Everyone has friends. Everyone has history. Everyone has people who were there before you arrived. People whose names live in their stories like furniture in an old house. He told me they ran a business together. He told me they had similar ambitions. He told me she was important to him. And because I was trying to be a reasonable person, because I did not want to be the kind of girlfriend who hears a woman's name and immediately starts building a courtroom in her head, I nodded. I listened. I told myself this was normal. Then, a few weeks into dating, I did something almost everyone does and almost nobody admits with dignity. I looked him up. Not just the surface-level search, either. I wandered through his Facebook photos the way a person wanders through a house they have no business entering, touching nothing, judging everything, collecting tiny pieces of someone's past, and pretending it was curiosity instead of hunger. And that was where I saw her. Jenna. Not as a casual friend standing at the edge of a group photo. Not as a blurry face in the background at some party. She was everywhere. Jenna with Jeff at restaurants. Jenna with Jeff on beaches. Jenna leaning into him like she belonged there. Jeff smiling down at her like she had said something only he could hear. There were pictures that did not need captions, but they had captions anyway. Sweet ones. Couple Y ones. The kind that make your stomach pause before your brain catches up. Then I found her Instagram. And if his Facebook had whispered something to me, her Instagram shouted. It was filled with him. Not sprinkled with him. Not occasionally featuring him. Filled. Jeff laughing. Jeff hiking. Jeff sitting across from her at a table. Jeff looking comfortable and familiar and claimed. And there were hashtags, too. The kind of hashtags people use when they want the world to see not just a moment, but a message. Relationship goals. That one sat in my chest for a while. Relationship goals. I remember staring at the screen, my thumb frozen above the glass, feeling that small stupid sting of embarrassment that comes when you discover something everyone else seems to know before you do. They had dated. Of course they had dated. The pictures made it obvious. The captions made it louder. The silence from Jeff made it worse. Because he had told me about Jenna. He had told me she mattered. He had told me she was his best friend. He had told me they worked together. But he had not told me they used to be a couple. And that omission sat between us quietly for weeks. I kept waiting for him to say it. There were so many openings. A story about college. A memory about a trip. Some mention of her parents. Every time her name came up, I waited for the sentence to turn. For him to say, we dated once. Or, it was complicated. Or even, I should have told you this earlier. But he never did. So after 2 months, I finally asked him. Not dramatically. Not with tears. Not with a grand accusation. Just one evening, with my pulse tapping hard in my throat, I asked if he and Jenna had ever been together. And he admitted it. They had met in school. They had dated for 9 months. They had broken up a year and a half before he met me. He said the relationship had been awful. Not tragic. Not romantic. Not unfinished. Awful. He said they worked better as friends. He said starting the business after they broke up had actually been good for them. He said they understood each other better when romance was out of the way. I wanted to believe him. Because that is one of the stranger dangers of loving someone. You do not only want the truth. You want the version of the truth that lets you stay. And Jeff was good to me. In every other way, he was good. He introduced me to his family early. His friends knew me as his girlfriend. I never felt hidden from the rest of his world. Only from her. Only Jenna. And that was where the story stopped making sense. Because months passed, and I still did not meet her. At first, it almost seemed accidental. I would go to events where I thought she would be there, and somehow, she would not be. I would meet Jeff after work at the office he shared with her, and somehow, she would already be gone. I would hear her name in plans and schedules and stories, but when the actual moment came, Jenna would vanish like someone had lifted her out of the room seconds before I arrived. There were near misses. Too many near misses. That is what began to bother me. A person can miss one dinner, one party, one office visit. Life is messy. People have plans. Timing is ridiculous. But when every single path bends away from the same person, eventually you stop calling it timing. One day, I went to meet Jeff at the office, and instead of letting me come inside, he came out to meet me. It was small. Tiny, really. He smiled. He kissed me. He acted normal. But something in the movement felt like a door being held shut. I told myself not to be paranoid. I told myself not to build monsters out of coincidences. But then came the open house. That night was supposed to be simple. Jeff and Jenna were hosting an event for their business, and I was finally going to be in the same room as her. Not some intense confrontation. Not a showdown. Just a normal public evening with co-workers and clients and snacks on paper plates. I had imagined it more times than I wanted to admit. Maybe she would be warm. Maybe she would be awkward. Maybe we would both pretend not to know how strange the situation had become. Maybe meeting her would shrink everything back down to its proper size. That afternoon, Jeff came to my place after work. We had a few hours before the event, so we went to dinner. I remember trying to be light. I remember walking beside him afterward, the evening stretching ahead of us, the office only a few blocks away. Then, when we were close, he started asking if I had work to do. At first, I did not understand. He mentioned a coffee shop nearby. A nice one, apparently. A good place to sit. He said he and Jenna needed time to set up. And then he walked me there. He actually walked me to the coffee shop, sat me down, and told me to come to the office in an hour and a half. I remember sitting there with my drink cooling in front of me, trying to arrange my face into something normal, reasonable, easygoing. The kind of girlfriend who does not make a scene because her boyfriend dropped her off like an inconvenient suitcase. I told myself maybe they really were busy. Maybe the setup was stressful. Maybe I was being unfair. Maybe. That word can keep a person in a bad situation for a long time. Maybe. About half an hour before I was supposed to leave, I texted him. I asked if everything was going well. I asked if there was anything I could do. And then his reply came. Something had come up for Jenna. She could not be there tonight. I stared at the message. Something had come up. Of course. Of course it had. When I arrived at the office later, Jenna was gone. The open house looked normal from the outside. People chatted. Jeff smiled. The lights were bright. The business looked polished and alive. But all night, people asked where Jenna was. Again and again. Where's Jenna? Is Jenna coming? Did Jenna leave? And Jeff had an answer ready. Family emergency. He said it smoothly. Not happily. Not cruelly. Just smoothly enough to make me wonder how many times he had already practiced protecting her absence. After the event, when we were walking back to the car, he told me what had really happened. Jenna had not had a family emergency. She had had a panic attack. She had been there with him, setting up, knowing I was on my way. And then the thought of meeting me had apparently become too much. She told him she could not handle it. Either she had to leave, or he had to tell me not to come. That was the choice she gave him. Her or me. And Jeff told her to leave. When he said it, I could hear that he thought this mattered. Like he had chosen me. Like I was supposed to feel relieved. But all I could think was, why was that even a choice? Why, after 10 months of dating, was my presence in my boyfriend's life something his ex needed to survive? And why was he still making room for that? After the open house, everything felt different. Not because something had changed, because something had finally shown itself. Once you see the shape of a problem, you cannot unknow it. It follows you. It sits in the passenger seat. It stands behind you while you brush your teeth. It waits inside ordinary conversations for one name to appear. Jenna. A few more strange things happened after that. One afternoon, Jeff and I were together, and we stopped by the office because he needed to grab something. Simple errand. Nothing emotional. Nothing complicated. We were almost there when he checked his phone. Then his body changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. His attention shifted. His pace slowed. He told me Jenna was still there. Then, he suggested we go for a walk. A walk. Around the block. For half an hour. Until she left. I wish I could explain what that felt like, without making it sound smaller than it was. Because yes, technically, it was only a walk. No one screamed. No one cheated in front of me. No one threw a glass against a wall. But there I was, circling a block beside my boyfriend because his ex-girlfriend, his business partner, his best friend, could not be expected to exist in the same air as me. And he was helping her avoid it. That was the part that cut. Not just what Jenna did. What Jeff allowed. Later, I told him I was uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable. I told him I could accept that they had dated. I could accept that they were friends. I could even accept that the beginning might be awkward. But this was not awkward. This was organized avoidance. This was a whole private system built around protecting Jenna from reality. Jeff apologized. He said he knew it was strange. He said he had been angry with her, too. He told me stories I had not heard before. Stories that made the whole thing feel worse. Like the party. He had gone without me one night, and his phone had died. When he got home and charged it, messages came flooding in from Jenna. She had been outside in her car, waiting, asking if I was there, asking whether she should come inside. And in the end, she never went in at all. Not because she was sick. Not because she was busy. Not because she had another plan. Because she did not know whether I would be there. I remember hearing that and feeling something inside me go very still. Because there are moments when jealousy stops feeling like insecurity and starts feeling like evidence. She was not avoiding me the way a shy person avoids small talk. She was avoiding me like I was a verdict. And Jeff kept telling me he did not know what to do. That sentence became its own kind of bruise. I do not know what to do. But he did know. Some part of him had to know. He could set a boundary. He could stop rearranging plans. He could stop making me wait in coffee shops and walk around blocks. He could tell Jenna that if she wanted to be his best friend, she had to respect the relationship he was in now. But instead, he kept acting as if the problem was delicate. As if Jenna's discomfort was fragile glass, and my discomfort was rubber. Something that could bend, stretch, absorb impact, bounce back. Then came the camping trip. 2 weeks. Jeff and Jenna had planned it before he met me. That was what he said. And technically, that was true. But truth can still be used like a lock. The trip existed before me, so what could I say? They had planned it before I was part of his life. So what right did I have to be uncomfortable now? That was the logic sitting in the room. Silent and heavy. But the problem was not just the trip. It was everything surrounding it. The panic attack. The disappearing act. The car outside the party. The office avoidance. The Instagram posts. The fact that she had been his girlfriend and he had not told me until I asked. All of that came with them. Packed neatly into the car. Tucked beside the tent. Rolled up in the sleeping bags. Carried into the woods with them. And I was not invited. I had work, yes. But I was never invited. There is a special kind of loneliness in watching your boyfriend leave with another woman and being told the situation is harmless by the person who keeps proving it is not. While they were gone, I checked her Instagram. I am not proud of it, but I did. More than once. And there he was again. Jeff in the wilderness. Jeff smiling. Jeff framed by someone else's camera. Jeff existing inside Jenna's version of the world. 5 new photos. 5 little punches. And every time I looked, I felt more foolish. Not because I thought he was definitely cheating. That would have been simpler in a terrible way. No. The thing eating at me was murkier. It was the feeling that, even if nothing physical happened, something was already being taken from me. Priority. Peace. Dignity. The right to feel like the woman my boyfriend chose without needing to compete with a ghost who refused to leave the room. By the time he came back, something in me had hardened. Not into anger exactly. Into clarity. I had been trying so hard to be cool. So understanding. So modern. So careful not to sound jealous, controlling, insecure, dramatic. But there is a point where trying to be reasonable becomes a costume you wear while someone else behaves unreasonably. And I was tired. I was tired of being patient with a woman who would not meet me. Tired of being reassured by a man who would not change anything. Tired of feeling like the problem was my reaction, not their arrangement. So I told myself that when he returned, I would stop softening the truth. I would say it plainly. This was not okay. And if he could not see that, then maybe the relationship I thought I was in was not the relationship I actually had. For a while, I stayed. That is not the clean, cinematic version of the story, but it is the honest one. I did not break up with him immediately. Life rarely moves with the sharpness people imagine from the outside. When you are inside a relationship, even a painful one, the heart does not behave like a judge banging a gavel. It hesitates. It remembers. It collects every good thing and places it gently beside every red flag, then asks if maybe the good things are heavier. And there were good things. So many good things. Jeff and I laughed easily. He knew me in small ways. He made me feel seen in rooms where I usually felt like furniture. He was kind to servers, patient with strangers, generous with his time. My family liked him. His friends liked me. His world, except for one locked room, had opened around me. So I stayed. For a few months after that first wave of fear, nothing dramatic happened. Nothing that would look like much from the outside. Jeff continued dating me. He continued working with Jenna. I continued not meeting her. And I told myself I could handle it. That maybe if I waited long enough, the weirdness would burn itself out. Maybe she would get over whatever she was feeling. Maybe Jeff would grow tired of accommodating her. Maybe time would do what neither of them seemed willing to do. Then I took a work contract 12 hours away. 3 months. A new city. A temporary room. A schedule that kept me busy enough to look functional, but not busy enough to quiet my mind. Distance did something cruel to the relationship. When I was near Jeff, I could feel the weight of what we had. I could touch the proof. His hand in mine. His voice in the room. His face across the table. But from 12 hours away, Jenna became louder. Not in real life. Online. In pictures. I looked at her Instagram almost every day. Almost every day. It became a ritual I hated and performed anyway. I would tell myself not to do it. Then I would do it. I would open the app with this sick little hope that there would be nothing new. That maybe she had stopped. That maybe Jeff would not be there. But more often than not, he was. Another photo. Another moment. Another little window into a life where I was absent, and she was close enough to capture him. And the longer I stayed away, the more it felt like Jenna was his real girlfriend. I was the voice on the phone. The woman waiting in another city. The official title with no physical presence. She was the one near him. The one seeing him. Working beside him. Posting him. Sharing routines and time and oxygen. I felt worthless. That is not an elegant word, but it is the right one. Worthless. I felt like I had been trying to convince myself I mattered in a situation where everyone's actions suggested Jenna mattered more. I was constantly stressed. My body felt wired all the time, like it was waiting for bad news. Even ordinary days carried that hidden hum underneath them. Emails. Meetings. Grocery stores. Weather. Dinner alone in a rented room. And beneath all of it, Jeff and Jenna. Jenna and Jeff. That little paired rhythm I could not escape. By the time I came back, I knew what I had to do. I did not want to do it. That matters. Sometimes people talk about boundaries like they are clean and empowering and bright. And sometimes they are. But sometimes a boundary feels like cutting off your own hand because it is trapped under something too heavy to lift. I still loved him. I still wanted the future I had imagined with him. But I could not keep living in the emotional basement of my own relationship. So when I came home, I broke up with him. I told him his relationship with Jenna was intolerable for me. Not uncomfortable. Not awkward. Not something I needed to work on. Intolerable. I told him that as long as Jenna remained in his life the way she was, he was going to have a hard time dating anyone who was not her. And he kept saying he did not understand. That might have hurt more than anger. He did not yell. He did not confess. He did not suddenly reveal the hidden machinery behind everything. He just looked at me like I was speaking from a place he could not reach. He told me he could not control Jenna's behavior. He told me he had not cheated on me. And maybe he thought that should be enough. Maybe in his mind, the question was simple. Did I sleep with her? No. Then why are we here? But by then, I understood something I could not unlearn. You can betray a relationship without touching anyone. You can betray it by making your partner small, by asking them to wait outside, by letting someone else's feelings outrank theirs again and again, by saying you cannot control another person, while quietly building your life around their demands. I told him I did not even care anymore whether he had physically cheated, not because it would not matter, because the damage was already there. He had shown me where I stood, and it was not beside him. It was somewhere behind Jenna's comfort, somewhere behind her panic, somewhere behind his refusal to draw a line. When it ended, I expected to feel only grief, but there was relief, too. Thin at first, almost guilty, like a window opening in a room I had forgotten was airless. I stopped speaking to him for a few months. I went on with my life, or at least, I tried. After the breakup, I took another contract out of town. Part of me needed distance again, but this time it felt different. The first time, distance had made me feel powerless. This time, distance gave me back to myself. Not all at once. Healing rarely arrives like a rescue team. It comes in scraps. A morning where you do not check anyone's Instagram. A dinner where you laugh and realize you meant it. A long drive where the silence does not feel like punishment. A new city street where nobody knows your story, and for a moment, neither do you. I considered moving permanently. That surprised me. At first, it was just a thought I let drift around the edges of my mind. Then it became a possibility. Then, some days, it became a plan. I pictured a different apartment, a different routine, a life where Jeff was not the center of every unresolved question. A life where Jenna was just a name that belonged to a painful chapter, not a person with invisible hands still rearranging my piece. I did not feel strong every day. Some days, I missed him so badly it felt physical. I missed the good parts. That is one of the cruel tricks of ending something that was not entirely bad. You do not just grieve the pain. You grieve the tenderness, too. The jokes. The habits. The little future you had been building in your head without noticing how much furniture you had already moved in. But each week away from him made something clearer. I had not been unreasonable. I had been lonely in a relationship that kept asking me to be understanding of my own displacement. And then, one night, Jeff called. I remember looking at his name on the screen and feeling my body respond before I did. That old rush. Fear and hope tangled together. I answered. His voice was different. Not theatrical. Not desperate in the way I had sometimes imagined it might be if he ever came back and begged. Just quieter. He apologized. He said he had been thinking about us. About everything. He said he realized he had been wrong. I listened, guarded and still. Because an apology can be a door, but it can also be bait. And I had learned not to walk through doors just because they opened. Then he said something I had not expected. He said his relationship with Jenna had started to feel toxic to him. To him. Not just to me. Not just because I had complained. Not just because his girlfriend had been hurt. He was finally seeing it from the inside. He told me he had made arrangements to dissolve their business partnership. That sentence landed with a strange weight. For so long, their business had been part of the reason nothing could change. They worked together. They had commitments. They shared responsibilities. It was complicated. Complicated had been the fortress around them. Now he was taking it apart. Or at least, he said he was. I did not say yes immediately. I did not leap back into his life just because he had found language for what I had been trying to tell him for months. Instead, I agreed to meet. Not to get back together. To talk. There is a difference. A thin one, maybe. But I needed that difference. When I saw him again, I felt the old pull. Of course I did. Love does not disappear just because you finally respect yourself. He looked familiar in a way that hurt. Same hands. Same face. Same careful attention. But I was not the same version of me who had sat in that coffee shop waiting to be summoned. I had carried my own heartbreak out of his life. I had survived it. So when we talked, I listened for more than words. I listened for ownership. He told me he had been wrong to let Jenna dictate the terms of our relationship. He told me he had mistaken avoidance for kindness. He told me he had thought he was keeping peace, but what he was actually doing was choosing her discomfort over mine. That mattered. Not enough by itself, but it mattered. Then he promised to stop talking to Jenna. He unfollowed her on social media. He said the business partnership was ending. And somewhere inside me, A part of myself I had been holding clenched for months began to loosen. Carefully, suspiciously, not with fireworks, with the slow, cautious movement of someone unlocking a door after a storm and checking whether the roof is still there. We got back together. I know some people would not understand that. Some people would hear this story and stop at the breakup, insisting that should have been the end forever. And maybe, in another life, it would have been. But relationships are not solved like math problems. They are living things. Sometimes they rot from the root and cannot be saved. Sometimes the damage teaches the people inside them what comfort never could. I did not go back because I forgot what happened. I went back because something had changed. Because he had made choices without me standing there pushing him. Because he had ended the arrangement that had made our relationship impossible. Because when I looked at him, I did not feel like I was begging for a place anymore. I felt like he understood that a place beside him was not something I should have had to beg for. 6 months passed. No Jenna. No secret meetings. No office walks. No Instagram discoveries. No coffee shop waiting rooms disguised as patience. Then, a few weeks ago, we ran into her at a concert. It was one of those moments life designs with a little too much precision. The lights were low. The crowd was moving. Music shook through the floor. And there she was. Jenna. After all that time, all that fear, all that imagined confrontation, she was not a myth. She was not a monster. She was a person standing in a crowd. Jeff saw her. She saw him. And they did not even say hello. No dramatic scene. No collision. No closure wrapped in a perfect speech. Just two people who had once been tangled in a way that made everyone around them bleed, standing close enough to acknowledge each other, and choosing not to. I watched it happen, and for once, I did not feel like an outsider looking through glass. I felt present. I felt chosen. I felt calm. The truth is, I still do not know everything. I do not know what Jenna felt all those months. I do not know whether she was still in love with him, or afraid of being replaced, or clinging to a version of their bond that only worked if I stayed invisible. I do not know what really happened in her mind when she sat in that car outside a party, waiting to find out if I was there. I do not know what she told herself when she posted photos from that camping trip. I do not know whether her panic was real in the way fear can be real, even when it is also unfair. I do not know every conversation Jeff and Jenna had after I left. I do not know what finally made him see the thing I had been standing in front of for so long, waving both arms, asking him to notice. And yes, there are questions I may never get answered. That is not easy. But I have learned that closure is not always a document with every blank filled in. Sometimes closure is simply looking at your life now and realizing you can breathe in it. For a long time, I thought the central question was whether Jeff had cheated. That was the loud question. The obvious one. The one everyone would ask first. But underneath it was something deeper. Can a relationship survive when one person lets another person decide how much respect you get? Can love be real if it keeps asking you to shrink? Can trust exist in a room where one door is always closed? I do not think I was wrong to be suspicious. I do not think I was wrong to feel hurt. I do not think I was wrong to finally leave. Leaving was not punishment. It was proof. Proof that I could love someone and still refuse to live beneath someone else's shadow. Proof that I could want a relationship and still choose myself when that relationship asked too much. Proof that being understanding does not mean becoming invisible. And maybe that is the part one would tell my past self, if I could sit beside her in that coffee shop. I would not tell her to throw the drink. I would not tell her to storm into the office. I would not tell her to be colder, sharper, louder. I would sit across from her while she stares at her phone, trying to make excuses for a situation that is already hurting her. And I would say, you are allowed to notice. You are allowed to be uncomfortable. You are allowed to ask why another woman's panic matters more than your dignity. You are allowed to stop auditioning for the role of the easy girlfriend. Because love should not require you to wait outside your own relationship until someone else feels ready to let you in. For months, I thought the problem was Jenna. And she was part of it. Of course she was. Her behavior was not harmless. Her refusal to meet me turned my relationship into a strange hallway of locked doors and whispered explanations. But the real problem was that Jeff kept handing her the keys. That was the lesson I had to learn the painful way. It is easy to focus on the person outside the relationship, the ex, the best friend, the coworker. The person posting pictures and creating tension and making everything feel haunted. But the person who owes you loyalty is the one standing next to you. The person who can protect the relationship is the one inside it. Jenna could avoid me, but Jeff chose to walk me away from the office. Jenna could panic, but Jeff chose to make it my problem. Jenna could post photos, but Jeff chose to keep letting the line between past and present blur. And once I understood that, I stopped asking why she was doing it. I started asking why he was allowing it. That question changed everything. It gave me back my voice. It gave me back my standards. It gave me the strength to leave, even when leaving hurt. And strangely, leaving may have been the only reason we had any chance of coming back together in a healthier way. Because he did not change while I was begging him to understand. He changed when I stopped making my pain negotiable. Now, our relationship feels different. Not perfect. I do not believe in perfect. Perfect is usually just a room where nobody has opened the drawers yet. But it feels steadier, cleaner. There is more air in it. I no longer feel like I am competing with a woman I have never met. I no longer feel like my place depends on someone else's emotional weather. I no longer scan social media like a detective trying to prove I am not crazy. I feel respected. And after everything, that feeling is not small. It is not boring. It is not less romantic than passion. Respect is the floor. Without it, love has nowhere safe to stand. Sometimes I think about that concert, the crowd, the lights, the brief sight of Jenna across the room. For so long, I had imagined meeting her as this enormous event. I thought it would crack the sky open. I thought there would be some revelation in her face, some answer I could read if I looked hard enough. But when the moment finally came, nothing exploded. She was just there. And then she was not. That was when I understood how much of my life I had given to the idea of her. This woman who had never spoken to me. This woman who had shaped my relationship from a distance. This woman who, for a while, seemed to have more power over my future than I did. And then, in the end, she was just a person in a crowd. The power had never truly belonged to her. It belonged to the choices Jeff made. And, eventually, to the choice I made. To leave. To wait. To listen. To come back only when coming back no longer meant disappearing. I do not know what happens next. No one does. Maybe that is the honest ending to every love story. Not forever. Not happily ever after carved in stone. Just this. Today, I am not waiting in a coffee shop. Today, I am not walking around the block until someone else leaves. Today, I am not staring at another woman's photos, trying to measure my worth by the distance between my boyfriend and his past. Today, I am standing in my own life. And this time, I am not outside the door.